Welcome everybody to Lab 2. This week we are going to be talking about displaying data. We're going to make some frequency tables and look at some histograms using PSPP. So the first thing that you need to do is download from Canvas the lab2data.sav in lab2data.sav. This will be just for today's activity. You'll also need to download Stats21 Complete. That will be for the homework, but we'll get to that in a minute. For now, just the Lab 2 data. Okay, now once you have that Lab 2 data downloaded, go ahead and open it in PSPP. Here I have it open to the variable view, and you'll see that there's two variables, the subject, also known as the participant number, and enjoyment, which is the question, I enjoy learning statistics. This is the same variable that we had in class that we went over that has 20 participants who answered just how much on a strongly disagree to strongly agree scale, how much did they enjoy statistics. If we go to our data view, we can then see those numbers. Again, we have subject numbers 1 through 20, as well as all of the enjoyment scores, how much they enjoyed statistics. Same data from class. What we're going to do today is try to recreate the frequency tables and the histograms that we did in class. First things first, let's create the frequency tables, the simple frequency tables. We're going to do this by going to the Analyze tab and clicking Descriptive Statistics and then frequencies. Again, what we're trying to generate here are just data describing what we have in front of us, and we want to know the frequency or the count, the number of times each value is chosen. So we're doing a form of analysis, we are describing the data, and we are getting the counts or frequencies. When we click that, it's going to pop open, I had it on my other screen, it's going to pop up and open this frequencies window. In here, you get to tell PSPP what variables do you want to know about, as well as what statistics do you care about. So for us, we are going to do the enjoyment, and there's a number of ways you can move this over into the variables. The easiest is to click this little arrow, and you'll notice that once I have it over here, I can then click on the variable, and if I want to move it back, I can toggle it between using this arrow. Another way to move it over is just to double click it. Doesn't work the other way, but I can double click, and there it goes. Now I want to choose my statistics that I want available for us. We haven't yet talked about mean, min, max, standard deviation, but I'm going to go ahead and generate them anyway because they're pretty standard. In fact, PSPP every time will automatically have these prepared. You can also look at other things such as skewness, which we're going to talk about. You can look at the range, you can look at the mode and median, which we're going to talk about. I'm not going to click any of those for now, but just know that in the future, or for the lab assignment, you might want those. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. This is going to tell PSPP to do what I've told it to with this one variable of enjoyment and with the 4 statistics that I've checkmarked. When you click OK, the output will generate in another window. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to pop that open. It's on another screen right now, so I'm going to drag it over. And here we go. It has the information about the syntax, about what I asked the system to do. Then it has those statistics, the items that I asked it for. So there's the mean, the standard deviation, a minimum and a maximum. Again, we'll talk about standard deviation pretty soon. It also has the number of samples, the number of values in my sample, I should say. So there was 20 participants who responded, so I have 20 valid items. Now, in the case that I had any participants who were in my data set but did not actually answer this question, they left it blank, I might have a missing number. Here, all 20 of my participants answered this question, but if I had a 21st participant who just skipped it, or in any of the data that you're going to do for your assignment, you might see that some people just left it blank, so you'll have a missing value. All right. The next thing we're going to look at is the frequency table down here. The value or the variable label that I had from my variable view is going to appear above it, as well as all of the valid scores that somebody could, the values that someone could score, the frequency of them, the percentage of times that that value was chosen, the valid percent, this is the same thing as the percent, but only from the valid items. So if you had any missing, it would ignore those. And then the cumulative percent. You will see that a number of these look similar to what we did in class. We have that frequency column that just like we did in class. You also have this percent. This is going to be the relative frequency. We called it relative frequency. Here they're calling it percent. And then here's the cumulative relative frequency, or the cumulative percent. This valid percent is something unique to PSPP. It's not something that we did, and that's because we ignore missingness when we're doing our statistics in class. The other thing you'll see missing from here is the cumulative frequency. There is none of that, so it doesn't add up the 4 plus the 6 plus the 4, so you'll have to do that yourself. The next thing that I want to point out is the syntax. So we did the point and click with this frequencies table, but you see that in the output it prompted these 3 lines of text. This is the syntax that I described earlier, the actual commands that are going through to PSPP. We can do the point and click like I showed you, or you can type in the directions to PSPP. You would type it in exactly as you see here, but you would do that in a syntax file. When you are writing syntax, the first line is going to be the analysis code. In fact, all of these big capital letters, these are going to be your code word syntax. So the first one is, what analysis am I running? Here we have a frequency that we're going to be generating, or specifically, we are generating frequencies. We only have a single variable this time, so in the variables code, we're going to say enjoyment. We're going to type out the name of the variable. The second line, or the third line, I guess, is the format keyword, and this is telling it how do we want to visualize these frequencies. There are many different code words that we could switch out for the formatting, and we'll see a couple as we go, but these are the most standard. Now, how do you tell PSPP to do this? Well, there's 2 ways. What I'm going to do is go back to my data. I'm going to go back to analyze, again, because we're running frequencies. I'm going to go to descriptives, and I'm going to go to frequencies. And the easiest way to know what to type is when you're in this window, instead of clicking OK, you're going to click Paste. What paste does is it's going to open up a syntax editor, so you can edit the syntax, and it's going to have exactly the commands that it's going to send to PSPP to run this. In fact, if I highlight this and I click Run All, it will then run, once again, the same analyses in my output. You see now I have it doubled. Going back to my syntax. So if I change this at all, maybe I'm going to change it to be that subject number. Highlight it, run selection, and now I see, here we go, my frequencies of subject in a table. I have 20 valid responses, and the valid responses are each of the subject numbers. I have 20 options, and each of them was 1 time, and so out of 20, that's 5% each time. So we see that this frequency table is actually not a very useful one, but PSPP allowed us to generate it. So you have to think about, do I want a frequency for this variable? Is it useful for me to see a frequency table? When it comes to the I enjoy learning statistics, it is, to know how many people scored each of them, not so much for the subject number. All right. I've now shown you how to get the frequencies through the point and click and through using the syntax. But we're going to now go on to the histograms. We don't want to just see the numbers in a table, we want to visualize it. There's 2 ways we can generate a histogram. The first way we're going to do is through the same point and click box that we used for the frequencies. So again, we're going to go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies. It's going to get this pop-up, and you'll see that the same information is stored. It doesn't reset in between. Now, it will reset if you close your PSPP or it shuts down. You can also reset it by clicking the Reset button. But we still want to look at enjoyment, so I'm going to move it over. And now I want to add a histogram, which is going to be under the Charts button. So I click Charts. This is going to open in a new window. Mine popped up over here. And I'm going to tell it, I'm going to look through and I see, okay, I can format, I can exclude any values, I can change it to percentages. And here I can tell it, let's draw a histogram. I can maybe tell it to superimpose a normal curve. We'll talk about normal curves later. But for now, I just want to leave it at histograms. And then I go to continue. I'll click OK to make sure it generates. And then go to my output. Scroll down. And here again, I have the same statistics, the same frequency table, and now I have that histogram. And you should notice this looks exactly like the histogram that we built in class. Okay, so we have this histogram now. And we look at our syntax that popped up, and we see it still has the variables equals enjoyment. We still have format equals a value and table, those keywords that you don't have to know too much about. But now we have a fourth line of histogram equals no normal. This means I want to generate a histogram, and I want it to not have a normal curve. No normal curve on it. If I went back, and I went to my data, descriptive statistics, frequency, and this time I'm going to go to charts, and I'm going to tell it superimpose that normal curve. Scroll down. Here I have a normal curve. Again, we'll describe that later, but we see that the code word changed. What I want to show off here is less about what is a normal curve. Don't be overwhelmed by that. I just want you to see that when I change the keywords here, it's going to change the output. Now, same way we want to generate this in our syntax. We go to descriptive frequencies, and we could paste this. Go to my syntax, and we'll see now I have this frequencies. Highlight it. I could, I'm not sure where this came from. We want to get rid of that. But we want to change it. I'm going to go back to the no normal and highlight it. Run selection. Scroll down, and there we go. I have my table. So theoretically, you don't have to go through this process of pointing and clicking and saying paste. Instead, you could just go into your syntax editor and you could just type this. If I wanted, I could just go down, frequencies, put the variables equals and table, could do the histogram equals no normal, and I always want to end it with a period. That's going to be very important. So now I highlight this, I'm going to run my selection, go to my output, and here again I have a pretty useless frequency table, and here I have a histogram. And you'll see in this histogram that it doesn't do it by single values. It's going to group my values. So here we have all of the people who scored between 1 and 6, and all of the people between 0 and 6, and all the people between 6 and 12, and all between 12 and 18, and all between 18 and it looks like 24. So you'll see this histogram is a poor representation of what's actually occurring in this data. What I want you to see is that sometimes generating the histogram is not going to be very useful. All right. I'm back in my Lab 2 data file, and I've shown you two ways to develop histogram. The first through the point and click, going to analyze descriptive statistics, frequencies, and the second by using the syntax editor. Now I know we got the syntax by using the paste button, but theoretically we could have just typed it out. And we will be doing that in the future, but I want you to see that syntax. So let's continue with the syntax, and I want to show you what happens when we start to change what we are doing in the analyze function. So I'm going to do descript statistics, frequencies, and this time I still have enjoyment, but I'm going to change it up. The statistics I'm asking for are the mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum, but I want to see what happens when I add in mode and median. I want to include those, find out more about them. So I would go here, and instead of running OK, actually I'm going to go OK. And this is going to generate in my output. And here I'll see now in my statistics I have the median and mode included. But I also have in my syntax here this extra line of statistics equals default mode median. So the first thing it's telling me is what kind of statistics do I want? I want the default. And we know the default are that mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum because those are what appear when we didn't have this line. When we weren't clicking anything or telling any extra commands, they were what auto-generated. But then on top of that, I want to add my mode and median. So again, I could go to my syntax editor, syntax, and I could go here and decide that I am going to include another line, statistics equals our default mode and our median. Make sure we spell it right. I'm going to get rid of the histogram at this point, highlight it, run selection, and I'll see in my output, here again I have the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, min, maximum, and the frequency table. I got rid of the histogram. Cool. So we still have this default, that mean, standard deviation, min, and maximum. Well, what happens if I don't want the mean and maximum? If it's the default, can I get rid of it? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we absolutely can. Let's go again to the analyze descriptive statistics, frequencies. And this time, let's get rid of actually the min and maximum. I don't want to know about those. I just want to keep the mean and standard deviation. So click OK. Go to my output. Scroll down, still has the histogram. And here I'm going to go to this, I'll see, okay, I have mean, median, mode, standard deviation. But when I look at the statistics line, now instead of default, I have just mean and standard deviation along with that mode and median. So it's not doing my default values anymore, it's just doing what I'm telling it to do. Again, I could include this in my syntax, get rid of that default, and instead type, let's just do the mean and the median this time. I'm going to keep it real simple. Highlight it, run my selection, and in my output, here I have just the mean and the median. So by changing what I have in either the point and click window or by changing it in the syntax editor, then I can change what PSPP generates. So here I am back in my syntax editor, and you might be asking yourself, hey, if point and click works so well and we were using it for the paste function, and why do I need to know this syntax? I could just point and click everything. And you're not wrong. That's exactly what you could do. And for frequencies, that's not really a problem. You can absolutely do that. For instance, if you want to run multiple frequency tables, you can just type in multiple variables, as we have here, where we have enjoyment and subject number in the frequencies. However, later on as we progress, you are going to find that there's a lot of redundant behaviors, that maybe you want to run the same analysis 3 or 4 or 5 different times, but with different combinations of variables. Normally, with point and click, you would have to go into analyze and do multiple points and clicks and changes and then slight nuance and then get it, and if you mess up, you have to redo it. Whereas with the frequencies in the syntax, with the syntax editor, you can just copy and paste the same the same syntax you want and just change the variable names. You'll start to see that it is redundant in a good way. So you want to learn how to use this syntax. The second reason you might want to do it is because, as we saw in our output, that it gets kind of messy. I closed it down, but you had a lot. So as you might see in the second reason that you might get rid of, the second reason that you might like your syntax is because as we were playing with all of these different combinations of variables and whether we wanted to have certain statistics or to have a normal distribution mapped onto our histogram or not, you were playing a lot. And you generated a lot of output that was redundant in a bad way that you didn't actually want. And so what you can do is close your output and it will erase everything you've done so far, and instead go to your syntax, make sure you have exactly the right codes for exactly the right analysis after you've played with it. And you leave that and run that by itself. So for instance, after all of our playing, I might decide that the only things I care about are to have a mean, median, and mode, and I want to have a histogram without a normal curve. So I would delete everything else here. I'm going to go to my statistics and make sure that mean, median, and mode are present. I'm going to get the histogram without a normal curve. I could then make sure to go to any output that I currently have, delete it because it has all of my playing, it has all of the tests I've done to get the right syntax or however you wanted to go about it. And I'm going to highlight my final text, and it could be more than one analysis, you could have a whole range of it, but for this one we just have the single frequency of enjoyment. Highlight it all, and then run that selection. It will open a new output viewer with just the analyses that you want to submit to the professor, to me, and this is what you are going to send in. Again, I don't want to see all of the play you've done. I want it to be very clear which are the analyses, the final version of the analyses that you think I want to see. Submit that. So when you have your output, you are going to save it by going to File, and you want to export it. This export is going to take you to your system, and you get to decide where you want to store it. I'm going to just put it on my desktop, and I'm going to call this the Lab 2 demo. And then I want to select what type of extension do I want this to be, so what type of file. And I could save it as an SPSS viewer, so we could open it in SPSS. I could save it as an HTML, so we can see it in the internet. As a text file, it will be kind of ugly, but we could do it. But instead, I'm going to save it as a PDF. So it's going to add the PDF end, and I'm going to click Save to that. And it'll go, and if I go back to my home screen, I will now see that I have, where is it? There it is, Lab 2 demo. And I could open this Lab 2 demo, and here I have the nice, clean layout of exactly what I just generated. So again, it has the perfect syntax for this assignment. It has those statistics. It has the frequency table that I want and the histogram that I wanted. Right. So this you could then upload to Canvas, submit it as along with your assignment, attach it to your other documents as you want. But it is nice, clean. It is very easy for me, your professor, to read over and see exactly what you did and know that you knew that it was the right thing, the correct solution to the lab assignment. All right, that's it for today. I know I was talking a little bit slower today, but that was to help you follow along. What I've shown you today is how to use the point and click in PSPP to generate those frequency tables and to generate histograms, as well as what the corresponding syntax is. We are going to be seeing a lot more syntax as this course goes on, so I want you to really get familiar with it. On the lab assignment for this week, you are going to have to generate your output and submit it to me. So if you have any questions, if you were confused about anything, please make sure to stop by my office hours. Please be sure to ask questions. I am happy to help and walk you through this. So, best of luck, and I will see you in class.